Hi and welcome to our lesson on equivalent fractions with Maths with Mum. Equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value. This bar represents one whole. If we draw a line down the middle of one of these bars and shade in one part, we can see that 1/2 is shaded in. If we draw another bar and this time divide it into 4 parts, we can see that to shade in half of this bar, we need to shade 2 parts. 2 out of 4 are shaded in, so the fraction here is 2/4. We can see that both fractions are the same size. This time we have divided the bar into 8 parts. In order to shade in half of the bar, we need to shade in 4 parts. 4 out of 8 are shaded in, so the fraction is 4/8. As you can see, all of these fractions are the same size. 1/2, 2/4 and 4/8 are equivalent fractions. Here is another example, again with the bar representing one whole. We will start by dividing the bar into quarters. 1/4 has been shaded in. We will be looking at fractions that are the same size as 1/4. The next bar has been divided into 8 parts. To shade in 1/4 of the bar, we can see that 2 parts need to be shaded in. 2 out of 8 are shaded in. This fraction is 2/8. We can see that they are the same size. They are therefore equivalent. This bar has been divided into 16 parts. In order to shade in 1/4 of the bar, we can see that we need to shade in 4 parts out of the 16. This fraction is 4/16. We can see that 1/4, 2/8 and 4/16 are the same size. They are equivalent fractions. We have just seen that equivalent fractions are fractions that are the same size. Now we will look at patterns in the numbers that allow us to work out fractions that are equivalent. We will start with 1/2 and use the equivalent fractions that we have previously found. Look at the numerators and then at the denominators. Do you notice a pattern? Looking at the numerators, we can see that to get from 1 to 2 and from 2 to 4, we multiply by 2. Looking at the denominators, we can see that to get from 2 to 4 and from 4 to 8, we also multiply by 2. We've multiplied the numerators by 2 and the denominators by 2. Alternatively, going in the opposite direction, to get from 4 to 2 and from 2 to 1, we are dividing by 2. And to get from 8 to 4 and from 4 to 2, we are also dividing by 2. We know that 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. So let's see what we notice here. Looking at the numerators, we see that to get from 1 to 4, we multiply by 4. And looking at the denominators, to get from 2 to 8, we also multiply by 4. Conversely, going from 4 to 1, we are dividing by 4. And from 8 to 2, we are also dividing by 4. We are beginning to see that to get an equivalent fraction, we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, or divide them by the same number. Here we will look at an equivalent fraction to 1/3. If we split this rectangle in half, we can see that we still have 1/3 of the shape shaded in. However, now there are 6 parts, with 2 parts shaded in. This fraction is therefore 2/6. Looking at the numerators, to get from 1 to 2, we multiply by 2. Looking at the denominators, we also multiply by 2. Alternatively, to get from 2/6 to 1/3, we can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. We have learned that to make an equivalent fraction, we can either multiply or divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. For example, I want to find an equivalent fraction to 2/3. It doesn't matter what number I multiply by, as long as I do the same to the bottom as I do to the top. In this example, I have decided to multiply by 2. I will begin by multiplying the numerator by 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. Now for the denominator. I chose to multiply the numerator by 2, so I must also multiply the denominator by 2. 3 times 2 equals 6. This gives us a fraction of 4/6. So 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. Let's see how this works using a diagram. To make an equivalent fraction of 2/3, we multiplied by 2, so we doubled the total number of parts. As you can see, we not only doubled the total number of parts, but we also doubled the number of shaded parts. To make an equivalent fraction, we can multiply by any number as long as we multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Now we will make another equivalent fraction to 2/3, this time by multiplying by 5. We will start with the numerator. 2 times 5 equals 10. Next for the denominator. 3 times 5 equals 15. Therefore, 10/15 is equivalent to 2/3. Next, let's find an equivalent fraction to 3/4. We will start with the numerator. This time, I have decided to multiply by 100. 3 times 100 equals 300. Now for the denominator. 4 times 100 equals 400. 3/4 is equivalent to 300 over 400. Here is a chance for you to practice. Think of 5 fractions that are equivalent to 2/5. For example, I will start by multiplying both numerator and denominator by 3. 2 times 3 equals 6, and 5 times 3 equals 15. So 2/5 is equivalent to 6 over 15. Pause the video now and see if you can think of some of your own. Here are just a few examples of fractions equivalent to 2/5. We can multiply by 2. 2 times 2 equals 4, and 5 times 2 equals 10, 4/10. We can multiply by 4. 2 times 4 equals 8, and 5 times 4 equals 20, 8 over 20. We can multiply by 10. 2 times 10 equals 20, and 5 times 10 equals 50, 20 over 50. we can multiply by 12. 2 times 12 equals 24, and 5 times 12 equals 60. 24 over 60. We can multiply by 20. 2 times 20 equals 40, and 5 times 20 equals 100. 40 over 100. We can multiply by 1,000. 2 times 1,000 equals 2,000, and 5 times 1,000 equals 5,000. 2,000 over 5,000. There is an infinite number of equivalent fractions, and as long as you have correctly multiplied both numerator and denominator by the same number, then you have found an equivalent fraction. Thank you for watching. Please have a go at the practice questions provided.